smoke. And if you stay in the mist, you gon' be soaked. So listen up, cause this hair of the dog. What's real, what ain't? Is this the fog or smog? Cause there's a difference when you breathe it in. So don't let the corporate media take you for a spin. This that morning show, they put you in the know. So I hope that you ready, cause all we do is go, go, go. Yeah, come get your info, you gon' be like, whoa. Hair of the dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the fact.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Friday, and this is Hair of the Dog, the cure for the neoliberal hangover. We are here on the DLF network, and we welcome you to our program this morning. As always, we are live. So if you type in your comments, in whatever channel you're watching this on, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, we will see those comments, and we invite you to join the conversation. So without further ado, let me introduce my lovely and talented co-host, Andy Kennedy. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning, Carrie. How are you this morning?
I've had way too much coffee and not enough sleep, so this should be awesome.
It's funny you should say that because I just went up to refresh my coffee, and it's Friday, and my wife and I are under house arrest, as I explained last time, because my mother is coming to visit. And the coffee pot was empty, right?
No.
So officially, my wife is cramping my style.
Nurse Deb, shame on you.
Nurse Deb is, she's going in places she doesn't normally go, and it's very upsetting to me, obviously, right? Because as a husband, you understand that you're king of your castle only when your wife leaves to go to work, right? So being here on my own is the only time I could, bark out orders and not have them rescinded. But the problem is that, when she's here, my bark is obviously worse than my bite. So
she knows better.
It's just it's a little frustrating, to grab it, especially when you take your cup and put it on the counter. You put your, sweetener and whitener. That's what I put in my coffee.
Creamer.
And then you grab the pot and it's empty. It's like, oh, good. This is good. Right.
Well,
so I'm like, all right, now I've got 1.5 minutes. I have to make more coffee.
Right. Exactly. Oh,
so, I know there are people with worse problems in the world, but they don't live here.
Well, I have already screwed up. I forgot to put the title on this stream. So for those of you just joining us and have no idea what we're ranting about, we have a very special guest today because here on this network, we're all about getting to the truth and pulling apart the complex stories and making sure that everyone understands exactly what's going on, because as we know, corporate media has their own narrative and sometimes it's not always factual. But first, before we get into that, I promised Jen Pearlman and her volunteers that I would share this really excellent, snarky tweet that she put out. So here it is. Jen Pearlman, for those of you who don't know, was running in the primary in Florida against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Boo. So Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Right. So what Debbie did a few weeks ago, we talked about the dirty deeds that happen to progressive candidates when they run for office, and we had this long list. And I'm probably going to give that off to Joseph Trina and the Dandelion Collective. So when they train candidates, new candidates, everybody's aware of this. And one of the tricks that actually happened to poor Jen was Debbie Wasserman Schultz stole her name and registered these two URLs, jenpearlman.com and jenpearlmanforcongress.com, and is holding them hostage. So Jen would like her name back, Debbie. Can you please release those to her? So my advice to any candidate who's thinking of running, whether it's dog catcher or Congress, and your election's a year out, buy your URLs right now. and make sure that
apparently, though, Jen was able to purchase Debbie Wasserman Schultz is a establishmentcentricshitball.com.
which is good. We love it. Yes. And you know, replace Tom Cotton is a good URL because Dan Whitfield, who's running against Tom Cotton, purchased that URL. So he did the reverse of it, and it's very smart. It's very smart. So if you're a candidate or you're planning to be a candidate or even toying with the idea, go get your URL because you don't want to go through a big battle or have what happened to Jen happen to you. But good luck to you, Jen, on that one. So
yeah, we don't want to have to call her Debbie Wasserman Jen Pearlman Schwartz because
that's too much. Too much.
It's almost like a limerick.
Right. So, all right. So now we're going to get serious for just a moment here, as serious as we can be. We're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about what's going on in Kenosha. We're going to talk about all the misinformation and the campaigns that are coming out. For example, Jacob, the gentleman who was shot by police 7 times. What we saw was this huge misinformation campaign that has already started ramping up where people are saying that he raped a 14-year-old, and I got to tell you, that is absolutely bullshit. What happened was the alt-right put out a narrative used, I believe it was Rhode Island statute to try and say that Jacob was charged with raping a child, and that is a lie. That is a flat-out lie. He was not. But why is it that we forget due process whenever it's somebody who's shot by police? So we're going to get into some of that, but first I want to introduce a very special guest this morning. This is Ryan. Ryan was there, and we actually showed the video on Wednesday. And Ryan is pushing back on us as well as other journalists for that video clip because he says that it was cut too soon. So, Ryan, welcome this morning.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to start first with the video so that everyone who didn't watch Wednesday for whatever reason can see what we're actually talking about. And then I'd like for you to speak to what was cut in this that we missed, okay? So here's the video.
Trap this goddamn bullshit business in, I get it. But you left the city open.
Well, did you know what the cops told us today? They were like, we're going to push them down by you because you can deal with them. And then we're going to leave.
See?
And then as soon as they said
the
that...
second the shots fired, I had to tell like 6 people it wasn't fucking you guys.
Yeah. So like we fucking... As soon as they said that bullshit to us, people hurt. Oh, you're hurt. You need to...
Okay, Ryan, that's all that was circulated. So what happened after this? You said it was a bad cut.
It was cut before and after. What you see in the video is a discussion between myself and my friend that was there with me, who is also a veteran, discussing what was going on. And we had one individual from BLM who was not happy with it at all, and we all weren't happy with it. And we were trying to explain to him that we didn't know what happened. And then the guy who actually shot the footage came up, and me and him had a discussion, and he asked what we were doing out here. And I mean, I think it's Free Thought Project posted the full 30-minute video this guy put out. But the conversation was about 8 minutes long. And we were open and honest that we were typically sympathetic to BLM. I've done marches with them. We weren't there to be against them or against anybody. And they kind of picked the clip where I was telling them exactly what the cops had told us. And the other BLM member cut me off there at the end. And then further on down the discussion, we had the discussion about why the cops were fucked up for doing this. Mm-hmm. You know, they don't care about the people and stuff like that. And, you know, that's what was pissing people off.
Okay, so let me make sure that I understand. You live in Wisconsin.
Correct.
So you saw all of this stuff going on in the headlines, and you went down to Kenosha for what reason?
Primarily, we were getting word from people that we knew down there that the government, the cops, they were doing absolutely nothing to protect the citizens of Kenosha, to protect their property. They were just protecting, government institutions, the courthouse and places like that. The places where the people who are angry about this, myself included, should be taking our anger out on them. Instead, they were gassing them, running over aid stations, and running them into the community at large and just letting what happened happen.
Wow. Okay, so that is the reference to your statement that we saw in the video, that they said that they were going to push the Black Lives Matter protesters towards your group.
Correct. They came up to us there about halfway through the night and said that's what they were going to do. And we were all like, "You're going to do what?" Like, no. Like, we don't want any part of this. And before we could even really react to it, they walked off, and here they came with their Bearcats and their Max Pros.
So, what do you think they meant by "you guys can take care of it"?
I'm not really too sure. They didn't give us any further information on that. They said it, and they walked away, and they hopped in their cop cars and they left.
Okay.
And did they know that you were there to support Black Lives Matter?
I don't think they understood what anybody was out there to do. We've had cops come up to us earlier in the day and say, one cop I had an exchange with before everything got started really was like, "Man, there's a lot of friendly guns out here. I feel good about this." And I looked him right in the face and I said, "We're not here to be friendly to you. Like, we're here to make sure people in the area don't get hurt and that things don't get burned down." And he just kind of waved his arm at me and walked off. And so there was a lot of I think the police on the ground had a skewed view of what the people that were there armed were there to do.
Okay, so for me, living in Chicago, and I've talked about it here on our program quite a bit, we have the Chicago Fraternal Order of Police who had been bussing in alt-right supporters and alt-right militia members to Chicago for the purposes of instigating and doing their own protests, because this is the first time in city history that we have not just one, not just two, but 3 Black women in charge of a major metropolitan city. They didn't like it. So when I hear your statement, and I'm obviously not going to ask you to validate or negate this, but when I hear it, it raises a red flag that Kenosha police may have the expectation that they can do certain things that are outside of the scope of law. Like, for example, the question was raised, were they trying to deputize some of these militia members? Did you hear anything like that? It almost sounds like the pass that they were giving your group, not understanding your purpose there, was an informal way to deputize these armed militias.
At the time, I didn't hear anything or anybody asking to be deputized. Before we went down, we saw the Kenosha Guard post, and we had all had our little talk on Facebook, and we're like, that's a fat op right there. They're trying to get people in there that they know they can catch up and wrap you up. We're not going to deal with that. We'll just go down there and find a business owner who needs help and help. And but as far as deputizing anyone, I didn't hear them say that, and nobody that I was around had talked about it or asked about it.
Okay.
I know that Kenosha Guard did ask to be deputized by the sheriff, and the sheriff said that he refused to do it.
Okay, to clarify, Kenosha Guard is a militia. They're not actually National Guard.
No, they're not National Guard at all. And I'm not sure if they were a militia that was formed well before this or just an impromptu thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Can't really speak on that.
Okay, fair enough. So did you actually have an opportunity to speak to the shooter that night, Kyle Rittenhouse?
Yes, actually. When we rolled up down there, we found a bunch of young men armed in front of a business with the business owner. And we all kind of made the agreement, hey, you know, these guys look like they could use some help because there's only about 3 or 4 of them. And, you know, me and a couple other guys were veterans. We're like, you know, we can get in there and make sure dumb shit doesn't happen here right now. And we pulled in. There was another guy there who was working for the hospital to help secure that. And me and him chopped it up a little bit. He was in the 25th ID during the Global War on Terror. I was with 3rd ID during the Global War on Terror. We chopped it up a little bit. And he's like, I'm not with these guys. I'm going to go back over there, but, you know, maybe you can help them out. And started talking to the young guys and the owners. The owners are immigrants. Family business, you know, and they were like, we lost $2 million worth of stuff last night, you know, please help us with this. And I said, cool. And I looked at all of them and I was like, okay, you guys look really young. How old are you? And they all gave me legal ages.
So wait, let's stop right there. So of these 3, Kyle was one of them, and he told
Kyle was in that group.
And he told you he was over 18?
Correct. And he was like, and I'm an EMT as well. And I'm like, cool, we're going to need a medic eventually at some point during the night, because we do expect things to get stupid, because they've been getting stupid throughout the week.
Okay, so real quick, I just want those watching, we posted the links to 2 of the articles that are out now circulating about Kyle, and the statement you just made where he identified himself as an EMT, that has been debunked by the Antioch Fire Department, who said he only went through a class. And having myself been first responder certified, you got to go through a major course and certification and do testing.
Correct.
So he misrepresented those skills as well.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So all around, Kyle was trying to get into something, from all appearances, allegedly. So after this initial conversation, these guys say that they're legal age and they're ready to do what did they say to you to indicate their purpose there?
Their purpose, and they were very clear about it, was to protect those properties because they worked for the people that owned them or knew each other. And like, well, cool, there's only 3 or 4 of you. You know, there's about 5 or 6 of us that came down at that time. We had other people that came down after we had already set in. But I figured 10 people would be enough to secure one of the locations and, you know, be able to keep the crowd calm and make sure nothing got torn up. And then we were trying to figure out how we were going to cover both locations of what we had. And then about that time, a bunch of trucks and vans pulled in. And some of them were bikers. Some of them were, one guy announced himself as he had been a former Blackwater operative guy. And I was like, you know, I was regular Army infantry, and we kind of, you know, contractors do some things overseas that, you know, we're not okay with at times. So I kind of was like, well, Eric, oh, he can come with us. And I'm like, no, we don't want him anywhere near us. Like, these guys are trouble. And I was sitting there trying to get a little bit of on the ground intelligence and like, how far do the protesters typically get? Because the building we were at, which is where the shootings took place, didn't look damaged. There was nothing destroyed down there. I'm like, do they even make it this far? Like, do people even come down here to tear things up in front of the hospital? And they're like, nope, every night they've never not once made it down this far. And I'm like, cool. Then we're going to leave these guys here because that's where they're not going to get into a confrontation with someone because of the way they were armed. You could tell they were kind of there to do some trouble. And I got everybody up and we walked up to the northern building that the owners owned.
Okay.
And that one had gotten a lot of damage the night before.
Okay, so that was the business. They said they had lost $2 million. And as a business owner, I just want to clarify for people: when you purchase an insurance policy, and every business owner should have one, whether it's liability or not, the price is about $150 for 6 months, and that's for millions of dollars of coverage. Within that policy, depending on who you buy it from, is a loss of revenue, kind of an act of God clause. So these businesses who have insurance, while they're going through this, and it's heartbreaking, insurance policies should cover it. So for my personal view, this is me as a business owner, $150 is a lot less than the value of someone's life. So I want to put that point out there so people can remember when we're talking about rioters, the difference between rioters and protesters, that this is the purpose of insurance. And if you're a business owner and you don't currently hold a policy, I am certain that there are insurance brokers in your neighborhood who would love to talk to you. Make the call. So that's my rant, my mini rant.
So do you mind if I interject here for a second here? So I read your post of the explanation of what happened on Facebook, and from what I understand is you clearly defined the difference between who were Black Lives Matter activist protesters and the militia that were there to protect them and businesses, the police, and then the other group that I didn't know about were who you defined as agitators. Now, according to you, the agitators were the ones that were causing the problem, that weren't affiliated with any group, but they were the ones that were going in and doing the damage to the local properties and setting fires and such.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So were these people well defined by you who they were?
I'm going to go ahead. It's going to seem like I'm getting off track, but I'm going to go back in.
Okay.
So my brother-in-law is a organizer for BLM in our local area. I'm well aware of what their values are and what they stand for. BLM made it very open and clear to us when we engaged with them who the problem people were, and disavowed them instantaneously on the ground. It only took one encounter with an individual to figure out that that's what they were there to do. The Antifa guys, they were a little aggressive with us until they figured out that we weren't there to kill them, because they had been fed information that there were going to be people coming down there with the express purpose of shooting the crowd and all this other junk. And the agitators, they were the ones running around trying to set fires, and you could tell who they were because BLM would start to jump on them as well. So it wasn't like they were uniformed or had some very clear way of telling who they were, but their actions spoke volumes, and we all noted it.
And this is including the one gentleman in the red T-shirt that had the clear plastic bag in his hand, right? That allegedly started the entire thing that happened with the shooter, and how that with who you know down there and how that started. Can you give us an idea of what happened?
Yeah, we had encountered the first victim several times throughout the night, and we'd always shoot him away by being vocally aggressive. He struck me as the kind of guy who wasn't going to do something unless he knew he had him out. He kind of had that. He gave you that feeling when he was around, that he was trying to do something more than what everybody else was there to do. And at one point earlier, before the shooting, about an hour before, somebody tried to set fire to a church. And they're a group of BLM protesters that we had dealt with amiably earlier in the night. He came running past, and these were skater kids, you know. They probably weren't over the age of 18 either. And they came running past with their fire extinguishers. They were running around putting out fires set by these people. And one of the girls who we had just taken down to the hospital so she could get worked on for the gas and whatnot, she pointed out, like, that guy just tried to set the church on fire. Watch out for him. So we already noted him in our minds. He disappeared for a little while. He came back and started getting aggressive with our guys. And we told him to fuck off, that that's not what we were here to do. You know, we're not here to fucking have a fight with you. We're here to make sure people are safe and that people's property doesn't get destroyed. And he was just like, fuck you, whatever. And then right about 30 minutes before the shooting, he went down to the gas station later in the night. He had that exchange with that individual. That was not Kyle. Kyle was with me during that altercation. We were working on a compound fracture at the time. Somebody got hit with a rubber bullet and bones sticking out and all this other good stuff. But 30 minutes before the shooting, we were walking through the crowd, you know, looking for people who needed aid. And him and two of his buddies walk up, and he looks at us and he goes, "If I catch one of you motherfuckers alone, you're dead."
This is the guy in the red shirt that made that statement? Okay.
And once again, you know, I'm in a crowd of protesters. We're not looking for an altercation. We're not looking to hurt anyone. We just want people to remain calm. And we'd said that to the cops as well. You guys need to be doing what you can to keep these people calm. And he was like, "Yeah, fuck you. If I catch you alone, you're dead." Oh. And then Kyle got separated from us, and then that's when the shooting started.
Okay. Okay, so it'll, you know, all of this hopefully will come out in court in due process, right?
Right.
All of these charges against Kyle are alleged, and this is the whole point of the Black Lives Matter protest. We want due process for everyone, that the police themselves should not be executioners. We want everyone to have their day in court, including Kyle, right? So, interesting point. So while you were out there, and we saw the video and you know, this curious statement by Kenosha police, did you see them doing other things or make other statements that led you to believe that maybe something's going on here that shouldn't be?
They never made any other statements beyond that made us feel like it was weird. Yeah, we had that exchange with the cop earlier on the day who was like, "Yeah, it feels good having all these friendly guns out here." Beyond that, most of they seem to like, they kind of, you know how when your kid's doing something wrong and you kind of chide them and you kind of push them back on the right track. When we were visibly helping the protesters, what would happen? And we most of us are pretty anti-establishment. I mean, politically speaking, I'm a libertarian and most of my friends are. We kind of ride that line of anarchy a little bit there. But so we weren't going to like necessarily be siding with the police on anything. Oh. And they seemed to kind of want to coax us in the opposite direction. And that's why I said in my statement that it felt like, because they had just gassed us when they threw us the water. We let like 8 protesters that were in the little makeshift aid station we'd put in the building out, and they're like, "You need to get away from the building," and gas went everywhere.
Whoa. Okay, so on that note, There was a video that surfaced that is now causing controversy. Kenosha Sheriff David Beth in 2018 made this statement that is now making the rounds. And I want to show this statement now. It's a short video clip, but I'm going to go ahead and cue that up. If I can get it to work, maybe I cannot.
I gotta find a way to watch it.
Yeah, what I will do is, okay, so in this particular statement, he's talking about locking people up, throwing them away for the crime of having children. And just a whole litany of things that actually violates Wisconsin law, Kenosha law, and the U.S. Constitution. And this is where I think we do our pushback here because as progressives, you know, we hear from both Democrats and Republicans that we're socialists. We're not. We are center policy, and we kind of have a thing for the U.S. Constitution. So what is alarming in this vein, and I think why libertarians and others can at least get together in agreement on this, is due process is guaranteed under the U.S. Constitution. And even something that we've talked about here, the heckler's veto. If I have First Amendment rights to free speech and for redress to protest, and my colleague standing next to me does something that's illegal, like graffiti or things like that, the police cannot shut down the protest.
Right.
Right. So you were talking about them tear gassing people and instituting we know that they instituted a curfew, but this Kyle was not necessarily, we saw a video where he was not challenged on that. Can you talk a little bit about what happened when they started issuing the curfew order and to disperse?
For us, it seemed to not apply. We were, I mean, you see me on plenty of videos. We're walking around with impunity. The police did not want to cause a negative confrontation with us at all. And I think that was kind of part of the whole, well, we want to pump these guys up and think whatever they're going to do is going to be okay and acceptable. And I mean, that's the way it started to feel to me. And all the veterans in the group, we started looking at all the people who weren't, and we're like, you guys need to really watch what you're fucking doing right now. And we started self-policing. We did have some people who were doing some things that were not okay.
Right.
And there were plenty of shouting matches amongst our group about that. You know, stop doing that. We had one guy who, he was just a little, he got scared because somebody had thrown a bottle that it turned out later on, it was filled with bleach and ammonia, and hit me with it, and it popped and exploded, and I was still kind of dealing with that. And he pointed his weapon at him after they had thrown it, and then the crowd got pissed off. And it was a large group of agitators at that time. Most of the BLM people kind of ran over when they saw what had happened. But they tried to get pissy with him, and I had to fight through it and tell him, hey, you know, I'm going to deal with that guy. But I don't know what you just threw at me, but you don't need to do that again.
Right.
Like, that's not cool.
And I'm sure you're paraphrasing.
A little bit, yeah. Don't fucking throw something at me like that again. You know, I didn't know what the chemical was at the time. So
maybe he thought you had coronavirus and was trying to help you.
He was just trying to, he was trying to help me cure it.
Right. Okay. So what's interesting to me is that the only difference between you and a protester that I can tell is you were open carrying. I'm not sure what kind of weapon that was, but we can clearly see that you are armed. And
correct.
So in my mind, it goes back to what happened in Stone Mountain, Georgia, like last week, 2 weeks ago, where you had this entire group of a black militia out there heavily armed and going through their paces. Nobody stopped them.
Yep.
So in Wisconsin, tell me a little bit about the gun laws, because I'm from Illinois where we have the FOID card and we
Right.
have some of the best training here. At least I thought till I saw Kyle. We have been the kind of the gold standard of training for safe and legal firearm owners.
Right.
But then we see someone like Kyle, and allegedly reports are coming out it was Kyle's mother with him. We're not sure. We're going to follow up on that. But how does this compare to Wisconsin with your open carry and ages and things like that?
Wisconsin is a full open carry state. If you're above the age of 18, you can legally open carry a long rifle. So long arms 18 and up, you can open carry that. And that came about not due to like protest or anything like that. It came about due to hunters getting the police called on them when they're coming out of the woods. You know, Wisconsin, 600,000 men just disappear in the woods every year. And we started having to, due to the deer population getting out of control, people had to hunt in, we have metropolitan hunt areas where it's caliber and type restricted to keep it safe. And people would see guys with their guns getting out and start calling the cops, and then it would cause issues for everybody. So the state went ahead and passed open carry. For concealed carry, you have to be 21. And you have to complete an 8-hour course, I think it is, unless you're a veteran or law enforcement. They take your last pistol qualification and your basic training certificate as, hey, you know how to properly carry and treat a firearm. To own a pistol, to buy a pistol, you have to be 21.
Okay, so not even like in Ohio and Kentucky where you got to watch a 3-minute safety video and good luck to you. It's just age requirement. So we did get a question in from one of our viewers. This is from Mike. He asks a question. He says, I might have missed this at the start, but what rules of engagement, escalation of force directives were agreed on or given to the group you were patrolling with?
Our group, I stated before we rolled out to the north end, we did have less than lethal options on us. They have these can of pepper spray grenade type things that you can legally own and purchase as a civilian. Carry gloves with rubber fists on, with rubber. I got a part here. So that it softens the blow if you have to slap somebody a little bit. Our rules of engagement were no lethal force unless lethal force is being used on you. Property is not worth somebody's life. And the only time that would change is if the damage to the property would have caused an obvious risk to life or limb to another human being.
Like a gas station, setting fire to a gas station. Okay.
Yeah, you set fire to, there were 2 gas stations there. If somebody would set fire to one of them, everybody in a 2-block radius would have been dead. So,
or
yeah,
somebody's carrying an obvious bomb or a pipe bomb or something like that.
Right. It was very standard. Like I said, the vets that were out there were all GWAT vets, so we're used to a very stringent ROE.
ROE is?
Rules of engagement.
Okay, thank you.
The rules of engagement overseas for soldiers is way more stringent than what American police seem to be following.
What an interesting point there, that in warfare, soldiers have a stricter set of rules than we are using here against our own citizens. And we talked about that a little bit with chemical warfare. So even the tear gas and things like that, that's against the Geneva Convention, but not for your own people.
Right.
So interesting that you guys seem to be handling a lot better than the Kenosha Police Department, and which is definitely troubling, I think, and the purpose of the entire protest, right? So the point is when someone is shot by police, and in this case, Jacob actually survived it, not
Right.
whole and intact from what we can, what we're hearing so far, but he gets his day in court. And even if Jacob went and robbed a bank and then went out to this dispute, still gets his day in court, right? So,
Right.
and then when we have somebody who's convicted, misdemeanor, state law, felony, and they go to jail, they serve their time. And the way that I was raised in this country was you pay your dues and then you come back to society. We don't hold it over you for a lifetime.
Correct. That's the way it should be.
That's the way it says in the Constitution.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not profitable.
No.
No, it's not. So, all right. So now we've got this situation. It almost feels like, and you don't have to answer this, but from an outside point of view, covering each and every one of these incidences, it feels like the police department is actively participating with the agitators to escalate situation. We saw this in Portland. We saw it in Seattle. We've seen it here in Chicago, where all they needed to do was just let people vent and protest. And if someone did step out of line, address that person. Instead, they're firing rubber bullets, tear gas canisters, and in some cases, live ammunition. So what is your take on what's going on in Kenosha? Do you feel like that's the case, or are the pictures and reports that we're seeing from independent media, do we have it all wrong?
Now I know within my segment of the side, there are rumors that there are, like, and it's been confirmed. I mean, you can go back to like protests for Occupy and see that the cops do send people out there to agitate and to start fires and turn it into something that it's not. I didn't see anybody who matched that description while I was out there, but they definitely were not interested in stopping it. I think that they knew they had enough bad elements coming in. While we were driving in, and I'll use the term infiltrate into Kenosha, because you had to. They had blocked off all the highways going in. And you had cops armed with dump trucks and their patrol rifles and stuff blocking the highway off. We actually had to, find a little podunk road to follow that to another podunk road to get to a larger road to get into Kenosha. And we were sitting low, like trying to get past the cops to get in there to do what we needed to do. But we had gotten intel from friends who were watching what was going on. We had outside comms with people who knew we were going. We were like, we're going to watch live streams. We're going to watch the scanners for the police. We're going to make sure that you guys have the information you need on the ground. And there was a report that there were like 60 or so Minnesota vehicles that were coming down Green Bay Road, which runs right along the lake, and that there were people coming in from Chicago and Michigan. And there had been a Facebook post from a Minnesota group saying they were coming down there to tear it up. So we were rolling into a situation where we knew we were going to have agitators. We weren't sure how many we were going to have. And we knew that the police, up to that point, had never done anything to stop.
True story. So
I don't think they had to get someone to come in there and do that. They just
it was ready made for them. So one more question came in, and okay, so Mike asked, because of the CHOP video issue, the one that we started this program with, have you considered using things like a GoPro in the future as kind of a makeshift body cam for yourself?
We have discussed that, actually, because of all that's happened with this in the aftermath. Friggin' one outlet, I think it was a Antifa outlet, called me a white supremacist Proud Boy. And I'm like, I hate those guys. Like, what are you talking about? I think that, yeah, I'll probably be, if I do that again, when I do that again, I'll be rocking a GoPro just to, so I get a POV shot of what I'm doing.
If you stream it, let us know and we will boost that signal for you.
All right.
So yeah, absolutely. So one of my questions, and I do have a little bit of concern about this interview because, you and I talked about I'm overly protective.
Right.
So now you have outed yourself, not just in your statement, but in this interview as somebody who is not part of the Proud Boys, not part of the alt-right. You actually support the purpose and mission of Black Lives Matter in peaceful protest. Are you concerned about your personal safety?
I've been concerned about my personal safety since all this started. Like I said before, I got hit on camera and I was getting named as things that I wasn't. And that was one of the, I've caught flack from the right side of the house since a lot of this stuff started. Because, what's right is right. And yeah, people may do wrong things or may stand for some wrong things, but a broken clock is right twice a day. I'm not so concerned about them necessarily. Most of the feedback that I've gotten from the right wing has been mostly positive. It's kind of the far left elements that I was kind of concerned about not getting the right answers and not getting the true answers and just going off on that tangent. And so that's why I made the official statement and why I'm willing to talk.
Perfect. Love it. And I think at the end of your statement, you summed it up really nicely about the effort to sow division. And we've talked about it here on this network that even with all of our progressive policies, 9 out of 10, we can get the hardline conservative and the leftist anarchists to agree that it's the right path forward. So with your statement, you kind of alluded to that. There's one last statement that I think we need to address. This is from the Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin. And she posted this statement, and it was in the article that I just published a link to. So Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, she was quoted as saying, "These armed men who have no connection to even the state," the guy is from out of town. I think she's talking about Kyle. "So think about how ridiculous that is," Barnes said. "Who is he accountable to? Nobody. And for him, for him to even be able to shoot somebody and walk away from the scene, that they talk about finding a knife inside a car, not even on Jacob Blake's person. This guy is carrying a long gun, killed somebody, just walked away freely, was able to get back home to Illinois. Then we got much bigger problems on our hands." So here she seems to be talking about the disparity in how police are treating these folks, whether it was the long gun that put them off or the color of his skin. He was able to walk with impunity even after witnesses said he shot somebody, and the police did not move on it. Whereas the narrative that we're seeing with Jacob is he had a piece of kitchen cutlery in his car. So you live in Wisconsin. What are your thoughts about all of these people who are coming in under the guise of Blue Lives Matter and shutting down the protests?
I think that they need to remember that the First Amendment applies to everyone. I don't have a problem with people coming in from out of state to protest or counter protest, whatever. But if you're doing that, you need to remember that you're a guest. And you need to act how a guest should. You don't tear up the people who are giving you hospitality's house, I think that those two sides can have more of a conversation instead of yelling at each other. I mean, we were able to do that on the ground out there. Even Kyle, who's super naive and whatnot, started to see the reason why people were out there with the cops doing what they were doing.
Mhm.
On the Jake Blake thing, I know that they've put out a lot of bullcrap. As soon as I saw that little meme that was like, oh, he's a pedophile, I'm like, no, third-degree sexual assault in Wisconsin is just like the catch-all.
Mhm.
They just throw that at you. And even then, they're all accusations at this point. It's a warrant.
Right. He hasn't had his day in court. He
He hasn't had his day in
process.
court.
Yeah.
You don't shoot somebody just because they have a warrant. Police are supposed to, or they're not judge, jury, and executioner. They're supposed to apprehend the individual and let due process happen. With Kyle's situation and why the cops didn't act on him is largely probably due to the presence that we had on the ground.
Can you
We had
clarify
men on-
that a little bit? You think
Huh?
that clarify when you say your presence on the ground might be what contributed to Kenosha Police Department hands off with Kyle.
We had guys on the rooftop behind them. The guys that had larger caliber rifles, we put them on the roof because that's, you want to utilize what you do have in the proper manner. Some of the stuff that was on top of that roof, the cops wouldn't have been able to defend themselves against had they made the arrest. We wouldn't have stopped them by any means. I didn't speak with Kyle after the shooting. The last time I saw him was when we got separated, and I didn't even know he was one of the shooters until me and independent media started showing me the footage that they had. There was also another shootout happening down the street. There's several videos I'm talking about in the video that got edited. We're trying to figure out how many shooters there were. And one shooter went this way, one shooter went that way. And we all kind of agree, there's two shooters. After we took care of the wounded that were up at near the gas station, we had charged at whoever was shooting down there with the intentions of taking them out because the cops weren't moving at all.
Well, it's also a strong possibility, as was the case with you guys and the Black Lives Matter guys, that the cops were just unaware of what was happening at the time.
It is a possibility, but where the last two shootings happened, that was right in front of where the cops were. They weren't even 50 yards away.
So they were right there.
I was standing next to the cops when I heard the gunshot. I think they didn't know what the hell was going on and just froze up. It took, as we got on site down there at the other location, and whoever was down there shooting was still shooting at the crowd. And they didn't stop shooting until me, a couple of armed Antifa members, and my friend that put the tourniquet on the guy that got the arm shot, until we rolled into the area and started making our presence known. At that point, he stopped and only gave pot shots to keep his position hidden so we couldn't see him. So we couldn't make a shot on the guy.
So this individual walked away without being identified.
Well, he went into an apartment building and the police eventually came around and surrounded it. And then there were gunshots that ensued between those two parties.
So there's a second shooter besides Kyle that we should be looking for.
I think the police may have apprehended them.
Okay. No, I think
they're
media.
not necessarily going to tell anybody who that is, right?
Right.
I'm sure they're not.
Yeah.
Wow.
but everybody that was down there agreed that, you know, I mean, I've been shot at before. and down there in that car area, there were definitely bullets flying around.
Right.
And Kyle was already up the road and trying to turn himself in, and then went back to the northern area.
Okay. This is definitely new information that is not being reported. So let's see if we can track this one down. So
the only people that I have, and this is did knock me flat on my ass when I saw it. The only people that have actually said anything about it was the New York Times. And I was like, "Whoa, New York Times."
Yeah, sometimes good journalists get something right past an editor, and even the New York Times can, it does happen. So we are actually at the top of the hour, and Ryan, I so appreciate you coming in to tell your side of the story and to correct the record, not only for us but for everyone else. So Andy, I have once again dominated the conversation. I'm gonna give you the last word and take us out.
Well, I just wanted to just button it down real quick with Kyle, is that from what I'm hearing, it sounds that this is more of a case of, you know, a young teenage guy full of piss and vinegar, you know, with a firearm going out with what he understands as what needs to be protected, you know, and being the father of a just until recently teenage child, that a lot of times these kids don't necessarily think about the consequences of their actions. And maybe that Kyle was put into a situation where he was forced to do something that he wasn't necessarily equipped or ready to handle. And it just escalated past his age, per se. And is that, in your mind, a fairly correct statement?
That is a fairly correct statement. Cal's a young kid, you know, naive.
Yeah.
He was, and like I'm of the opinion that he felt like he was defending himself in the 3 shootings.
Right.
The statements from the guy who he shot first to us, and at the time I had no idea who the first person that got shot was, until they started releasing information about it. I feel like he got forced into a situation and he acted. And I'm not here to say whether that was right or wrong.
Right. Right.
No, that was between, you know, whoever was attacking him and whoever was chasing him. They made their conscious decision, and he had to make a conscious decision. Would I have reacted differently to it? I'm not sure if it would have gotten as far as it did had it been me instead of him.
Right. Yeah. So clearly, I think that there's a moral of this might be that if you're boots on the ground in a situation like this, it's more maybe worth your time to investigate who's there with live arms, you know.
Absolutely.
And make sure that something like this isn't necessarily going to happen, where cooler heads are going to prevail as opposed to inexperienced, you know, shooters that could potentially escalate things out of control and get people killed, like what happened.
Correct. For us, I'm going to use Army terms, but operationally, the group of friends that I went down there with, we've had discussions about this. And the biggest mistake we made that night was allowing ourselves to be separated. That's your number one rule in patrolling that we all learned. You never get separated from anybody. And we allowed that to happen, and that kind of snowballed into all the stuff. Had everybody been moving in pairs, I don't think that the gumption would have been there on any party to do something like they did.
Right. Well, definitely a learning experience.
Oh, yeah, you know, it's terrible how it had to happen.
Absolutely. And it just, you know, what we know about mainstream media and the alt-right is something, they take a situation like this and they turn it around and they, vilify Black Lives Matter with it, right? And that doesn't help anybody.
Correct. There's a lot of vilification going around, and there's a lot of people out there that just don't have the facts.
Yeah,
and I'd rather people get the facts than just go off of, what somebody said.
Yeah.
Awesome. Ryan, let me just jump in here, and we got to get out of here this morning. But if you have more information, you need backup and support with getting information out there, please call us. Especially if you're going to do a GoPro, we will live stream that 24/7. Plus, we have relationships with other progressive independent media that will do the same, so that maybe our collective voices can overshadow those people who want to sow discord through misinformation. So fully put that out there for you, for everyone else who's trying to do the same thing that you're doing, and looking out just for the general public when, unfortunately, we have some police officers who seem to forget what their oath was. So appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
I'll be in touch.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
Appreciate it, Kathleen. Or Ryan, thank you very much.
Yep. So for everyone else who's tuning in, this is your first time, we are a progressive network by and for progressives. We are fully employee owned. This is not a hierarchy thing. We are all partners in the same company, and we are going to be working right now to be the first all-union media company in the country. So while Alternet and TYT are firing journalists for even talking about becoming union members, we're doing it. So this is the right thing to do, not only for us, but living our progressive message. And we thank you so much for tuning in. Look for more information and more good interviews. There's a story that I am working on this weekend. We hear the Black Lives Matter piece, but we're missing the story on Latinos who are also being targeted by alt-right agitators, especially down in Fort Hood at that Army base. So I will be back on Monday with that detail and all of that story for you. So tune in, 10 a.m. Eastern, and catch us here on Hair of the Dog. As always, interactive, and we welcome your comments, critiques. If you get snarky, I'm probably going to get snarky right back. But support us on Patreon, and we'll see you here bright and early on Monday. Thank you.
Take care.
Dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the facts, how it's supposed to be. Hair of the dog, we keeping it G.